every day you and I get bombarded with negative news. Just like the body becomes what we eat, the mind becomes what we're putting in. It is important to listen to stories that not only gives you hope, but also inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we're interviewing experts who will break down the solutions to the world's most pressing problems. And I promise you, if you listen to this podcast, you will not only stay informed, but you will also feel more energy in your life. Welcome to Greatcom Talks with. Greatcom is a philanthropic project where we're donating 100% of our profit towards the most effective cause areas like protecting the rainforest, funding climate change technology. And the best thing that you can do listening to this podcast right now is to help like and subscribe to this channel if you want to support the mission that we're doing. The topic of today is it possible to end the life-threatening hunger once and for all? And how would humanity do that? And to understand more about this, we invited Eric Bebernitz from Action Against Hunger. So I want to say, Eric, welcome to this interview.
Thank you very much, Spirit. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your time.
Eric, I read on the website that Action Against Hunger has been on the front line of helping to kind of prevent hunger for over 40 years, and that right now the organization has the capacity to provide 7 million meals or serves for families and children. So with that as a context, how far has humanity come to kind of ending life-threatening hunger, and how much more work do we have in front of us?
That's a great question. My response, I think, is, hunger remains an urgent public health crisis around the world. However, we have made progress. If you look at the past few decades, we've made a lot of progress when it comes to hunger. Action Against Hunger, in particular, has been at the forefront of this effort. The proportion of malnourished children has been cut in half in the past 30 years, and that's really remarkable. So I just want to underscore this statistic. There are 50% fewer malnourished children today than there were in 1990. But here's what's alarming. Over the past 5 years, the number of people suffering from hunger has been increasing. Conflict, climate shocks, and now COVID-19 are all contributing to a rise in hunger around the world and a backslide on some of this progress that we've achieved over the past 20, 25 years, 30 years. And because of the moment we're in right now with a global pandemic, I think it's worth saying a little bit more about this new current threat to hunger, COVID. I think for listeners in the US, we've seen how low-income communities are being hit the hardest by the economic impact of the pandemic. Similarly, around the world, it's the poorest of the poor who are being most affected. For people already living on the brink, in many of the places that Action Against Hunger works, the pandemic has the ability and is already pushing them over the edge. In addition to the immediate health effects of the virus, the pandemic is causing poverty levels to soar and hunger to rise. And really, the answer is pretty simple in a lot of ways. There's complexities to it, of course, but people are losing their jobs. They have less money to feed their families. Children are missing free school lunches. And in many countries like South Sudan, where Action Against Hunger works, food prices have gone up because of COVID and other factors. All of this, the UN warns, could result in an additional 130 million people left hungry because of the global pandemic. Action Against Hunger has been there already, and we don't want that to happen, but we can't let this moment happen or get worse because we have the capability to prevent and predict hunger. We're on the verge of seeing child mortality increase for the first time in 60 years, and we're working hard to prevent that from happening. And sort of how we do that is in a number of ways, but a lot of ways that we had traditionally done it aren't exactly COVID friendly. They involve close person-to-person contact, frequent visits to often crowded health centers. So we've had to adapt our work, and we're bringing care closer to communities now, relying on our community health workers who can screen children outdoors and then educate the community and families to identify the signs and symptoms of of malnutrition and how to prevent it. And that's sort of just an initial sort of response to your question of how we've been working to provide what we see as life-saving services while keeping our staff and the people we serve safe from the virus.
Thank you for the background. To summarize, the last 30 years, you're saying that 50% progress has been made to eradicate 50% of the hunger. With the challenges today, the global pandemics, climate becoming warmer, it is still an urgent matter in a sense.
That's correct.
What does it look like when you're operating? In what way are you helping, and what does the work that you're doing? Can you talk about anything specific so that we can?
Sure. So, as you mentioned before, and I was getting to, Action Against Hunger has been around for 40 years. We see ourselves, and we are the world's hunger specialists and leader in a movement that's seeking to end life-threatening hunger within our lifetimes. We believe that this is achievable, and we work right now in 45 countries, and really with the people most affected by hunger in the hardest to reach areas. And within that, I'm proud to say, the past year we reached 17 million. But there's a lot more work that can be done. And what that work looks like, it really rests on two pillars. Part of our work is dedicated to prevention, and then the other is dedicated to treatment. So there's similarities between both approaches in that, hunger has many causes, and each context is going to be different in how we respond. So it takes many forms. But what we rest on and what we're proud of is we really are committed to local staff empowering people within their communities with information about good nutrition, programs that help families put new knowledge to use by growing their own food, having access to clean water, programs, what we call WASH, water sanitation and hygiene initiatives that prevent illnesses like cholera and diarrhea, which are also linked to malnutrition. We identify these risk factors for hunger, which differ from place to place. Using those insights, we engage sort of in advanced planning to provide safety nets to help struggling families make it through the hardest times, like droughts and events that we can't necessarily predict. Action Against Hunger, we give expectant new mothers the nutrition and community support they need to keep themselves and their little ones healthy and strong. And it also means involving dads, although typically where a lot of the places we work, a lot of the burden is placed on women and young girls to achieve some of these results and to assist their families. But we do work with dads and who are vital to sort of household decision making. Our hunger prevention programs reach millions, communities living on the edge who need really holistic solutions. And then treatment is probably what we're, prevention is how do we have more sustainable programs and to empower communities to take care of themselves in the best way possible. Treatment is probably what everybody thinks about when they think about Action Against Hunger, who's familiar with us. That's really, turning up where the need is the greatest, usually in times of crisis, whether those are man-made crises, like a conflict in Syria or Yemen, or natural disasters like typhoon in Aceh, or crisis in Aceh, or an earthquake in Haiti, or the different hurricanes that affect the Caribbean and Central and South America. So we turn up to provide emergency nutrition in these situations, and we have highly effective treatments where we can bring a child back from the brink of death in just 6 weeks, and we achieve results, which I'm proud to say. So, I think when we engage in these treatment regimens, about 90% of all the children who receive this treatment are cured. But sadly, we have reach, but we don't have. There's room to grow and room for us to scale, because even with those results, fewer than 1 in 3 severely malnourished children can access hunger treatment. So there's room to scale. And that's our goal, is to really change this and have an increased impact on how we treat and prevent hunger around the world. And we're confident that this can be done within our lifetime.
I'm going to take the moment to summarize a little bit. So to address hunger, you would actually separate into prevention, which would be make sure there's no malnutrition, that water is not a problem, water scarcity or bad quality water. I think you mentioned more things there as well. And that would be one approach, prevention. And then the second one is treatment when there's a disaster showing up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Or responding to sort of seasonal droughts or changes in the landscape. I can give you one example for sort of what to ground this in one specific program, and that's in Pakistan, where we're helping groups of women grow saline-tolerant crops. So we're working in Sindh, Pakistan, which is on the border of the Indian Ocean and India, helping women become self-sufficient by teaching them how to grow these salient crops. You know, climate change is causing an increase in unpredictable and intense monsoons, which are impacting their ability to produce agriculture and livestock products. Monsoon flooding in Sindh has left, 300,000 people in need of food assistance. So climate change is increasing, for those who are not aware, of salinity levels in the soil, which makes it difficult to cultivate crops. To address these issues, Action Against Hunger created a pilot program that's working to help women in this district reclaim some of this soil. We're holding training sessions with more than 300 women to enhance their knowledge of soil nutrition, silage making, and production techniques to sort of cultivate tolerant crops. Providing grants to 22 women to sort of train the trainer model, manage demonstration plots to grow saline tolerant crops and vegetables. And this really is a response to an acute need, but it's also about building resilience, because if we can sort of cultivate more resilient crops, then people will have the resources they need in the future when there are these additional monsoon rains. And one of the crops that people are cultivating are sugar beets. And according to a case study that Action Against Hunger produced, the district with this support could theoretically produce, 30,000 to 37,000 plus kilograms of sugar beets per acre, which for those in America, it's about 66 to 80,000 pounds. It's a sizable amount. So we need to scale up programs like this one to give more families and small shareholder farmers access to the technical assistance and tools they need to continue to fight food insecurity.
That brings us into, you said that you are actually doing field studies to see what works. Tell us more about, are there any studies that you're doing that you think is important for people to know about?
Yeah, and happy to. This is where I think Action Against Hunger really sort of tries to differentiate ourselves from the wider field of organizations working in hunger and more broadly in humanitarian and development work. We are quite proud of our research and evaluation, and I'm based in Action Against Hunger's US office. And our office, in partnership with other global offices, are embarking on a project to kind of boost up our knowledge and innovation with a specific hub that would be based in Nairobi. And so that's bringing together sort of different forms of innovation and research to better sort of identify the needs as they evolve and as they come up, and then to sort of calibrate the work that we're doing so we can best respond and be effective partners to the people that rely on our work. And this can take all sorts of different forms. So I mentioned sort of market research, looking at beet production in Pakistan. This could also be research on the effectiveness of a system that we call PEWS. It's an early warning system that identifies in the Sahel region of Africa where the drought affected places are, and helps direct people working, pastoral workers, people working with livestock, to direct them to places where they can get water and nutrition for the animals, and then in turn those animals can provide food and cash to the people that rely on them. And so we'll take that and look at its effectiveness. So is the information correct? Is the information that we're drawing the right one? And then how do we scale it? How do we share that information across the sector? Because, I'm proud of Action Against Hunger's work, but we're not going to do this alone. We need to do it with the wider community. So taking this information and making it accessible for everybody. That's sort of I think one of the things I'm more excited about with the organization and the direction we're going. So, over the next few years, we'll be building out this hub in Nairobi that I mentioned, and it'll really hopefully be taking a lead for us on sort of maximizing the organization's abilities to produce this information and share it.
I want to empathize from what you just said there, that if you go to the website Action Against Hunger, you see that Action Against Hunger has gotten top-rated kind of qualification from the different charity evaluators. So Charity Navigator, GuideStar, Charity Watch, and it's quite rare to see that kind of recognition. So I guess all of these studies that you've been doing are contributing to also getting recognition for the work.
Yeah, that's right. And, I think for those of people who might be listening and wondering how you can get involved on a global scale, I would like to emphasize what you just said and take it a little bit further to say, when you invest $1 in Action Against Hunger, 93% of it is put directly to programmatic use. So there's a lot of bang for your proverbial dollar that you would get from giving to an organization like ours. So we're very proud of those ratings and what we're able to do with it.
Can you tell us more about if someone would give $10, $100? How far does that go? What can you actually do with $10 or $100?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'll start with 80. So with $80, because we're in this global pandemic, that's one day's worth, or depending on the equipment we buy, even longer of personal protection equipment, PPE for one health worker in some of the regions that we work, whether that's Somalia or Haiti. So it's really important for us to emphasize right now. And then on, for as little as $2, if someone wants to donate that on our website, that's money that we can use to equip one mother to detect malnutrition in her children through a MUAC strip, something we rely on heavily to identify malnutrition in remote settings. And then $100 could provide life-saving malnutrition treatment for a child. So that's the full course. So when we have to work in a crisis setting, we'll generally say it's $100 or less to bring a child back from the brink to the point where they are healthy and thriving. And that's if I was going to emphasize one number even more than the PPE, it would be that $100, and that gets to the bread and butter of our life-saving assistance and the value that we can add to communities and for people around the world.
The last question I want to ask you, unless you have something important that we missed here, let me know. Is there anything extra important that you would like to empathize, that you want people to take with them after hearing this interview?
Yeah, I would say number one, hunger is really, truly predictable, preventable, and treatable. And we can end hunger in our lifetime with appropriate action. I work in fundraising. I would be remiss to say, primary donations are the way to really drive this. But that's not necessarily what I want to leave everybody with. I want to give sort of an example of what this means in real life. And I alluded to it as in the MUAC strip, a nutrition thermometer. It's a way for us in a very simple, inexpensive way to identify malnutrition when it rises up. So this is a sort of showing exactly what it takes to identify and treat malnutrition. It's a MUAC band, and it's a simple tool that can be used by anybody around the world without need of literacy or even electricity. A parent can use this diagnostic band by wrapping it around their child's upper arm. And the band's color, it's 3 colors. A green indicates good health, yellow and red means the child's malnourished. And with this simple band, parents can see when their child needs treatment and malnutrition for malnutrition. And it's proven. When this is in place and they're able to access treatment, they can be brought back in as little as 45 days. Simple, it's effective, and at the heart of what Action Against Hunger does to sort of address malnutrition in its most acute form. That's what there's more that folks could read on our website about this. There's a story from Somalia about the MUAC band that I think is good. We worked with a man named Abdulani who learned from his wife and now checks his children every day, every week for malnutrition, and has done a great job. Health workers have noticed the difference, and it makes their jobs easier. So parents are able to sort of monitor closely where their children are at and seek treatment quickly when it's needed. So that's really Action Against Hunger in its purest form, and how we operate in really hard contexts, and do a outstanding job, in my opinion, of addressing sort of the more acute needs, and then moving into the sort of long sustainable prevention as well.
Thank you very much for taking the time, coming here, clarify the work that you're doing and what needs to be done. Yeah.
Well, great. No, thank you. And thank you for your time and for the opportunity to talk about Action Against Hunger. I think more people are thinking about hunger now around the world because of COVID, and we've seen this result in more donations this past year. We've still got a lot of work to do. So I appreciate the forum to be able to further emphasize this and continue to talk about the work.